Welcome back. Well, as governments across the world move to ban large gatherings in hopes of preventing the spread of coronavirus, much of the focus has turned to our sporting world. Already the NBA season, that's pro basketball in the United States, has been suspended. Football in Europe is being played to empty stadiums. There's talks that the Tokyo Olympics will be delayed. And earlier today, of course, the Australian Grand Prix was officially cancelled and it was due to begin in a matter of hours. Just before we went to air too, the Royal Easter Show was axed for 2020. Tim Gilbert, he's a sports expert. He's also a host of a relatively new program here on Sky called The Business of Sport. And it's the business and the money of sport that's the focus with coronavirus here. He joins me now from Sydney.
Good evening, Peter.
Great to have you on the show. Great to have you on the show, Tim. I've been fascinated by your show, The Business of Sport, because we always think of sport as something we do for fun and a bit of leisure, but it's a huge economic generator of wealth for this country. Of course, it's not just the people coming through the turnstile, but there's also all the wagering associated with sport and the professionalism and the back end of sport. This will be a big blow.
Oh, it's huge. Look, you could use so many words, couldn't you? Unprecedented, uncharted waters. All these things apply where we are at right at the moment. And the business of sport, the program itself, is everything you just said. It's not the kicking, the catching, the throwing, the passing. It's the machinery, it's the marketing, it's the artificial intelligence, it's the charitable side. And if we just isolate, Peter, what's happened here with the Grand Prix, I've had a couple of phone calls today of people being critical of the organisers. I find it, you know, that's probably an easy way to go, to be critical, say it was a shambles. But what do they do? How do they do it? There are so many stakeholders involved, both at that very high level, with the billionaire level, right down to stakeholders of students that work out at the Albert Park site, to stakeholders who have got their small businesses that they operate. 300,000 people through the course of the week, they say, gets to a day of this Grand Prix carnival, ballooning over 120,000 on race day on Sunday. Now, we know today that it's not going to be on. The Andrews government has been under a lot of pressure over the past few years, and they're having to defend the fact that Victorian taxpayers have to pay about $60 million. So this just piles on top of that and becomes a very, very expensive exercise for so many people.
I mean, there was a lot of mixed messages out this morning. There was a lot of deliberation. Was it on? Was it off? Was it on with no spectators? But of course, we know at about 6:30 today already the drivers had started to head to the airport. So the drivers themselves, and people say to me that it's very difficult to get sports insurance that will pick up a disease like this. But the drivers really forced the money makers or the industry's hand, didn't they?
Yeah, and I think Lewis Hamilton's media conference yesterday was the thin edge of the wedge. This guy's a six-time world champion. He was the favourite for this year. And he's come out and said, look, it's great that we're racing, but I do find it a bit embarrassing that we are all here where the rest of the world, and you mentioned in the intro, the NBA, now the PGA golf, like it could go through sport after sport, all being cancelled or playing to empty stadiums. Why are we still going ahead? And even this morning when I was on First Edition with Peter and Laura, there were people arriving at the track not knowing what was going on. And I had a friend of mine who was actually at the Chamber of Commerce inside Albert Park this morning, and the announcement came in, said, we have to tell you that there are buses here. You will be taken out of the precinct. It is all off.
All right, tell me what's going to happen with the AFL. I'd heard today they've got arrangements to have a disrupted season, perhaps to push it out, make it longer, play midweek, play to empty stadiums. The NRL also has contingencies, but the announcement today by the government of mass gatherings under 500 people being not recommended. I don't know if they can force them not to happen, but certainly the guidelines are there. So what happens with our two big sporting codes as they're about to kick off the season?
Yeah, exactly. There's a couple of wags kicking around saying that rugby union will go ahead because the crowds won't get over 500, but that's an Australian thing to laugh at everything, isn't it? But with rugby league and NRL and AFL, this is the first weekend of the rugby league and it will go ahead as normal. But from next weekend, there won't be crowds at the rugby league games. There's a bit of a contingency inside and in and around their state of origin period where they have weekends off. The AFL's probably better equipped for it because, pardon me, they have the bye round. They also have that weekend off before the finals. They can get in and around the midweek. It's not going to be easy for them. You look at a team like GWS who had this big blockbuster clash with Geelong. They had the women's game, then the men's game. And they're a team, I know they made the grand final last year, but they're still finding their way, aren't they, when you think of the economic presence in the world of AFL. So that's just a massive slap to them not to be able to have people coming in and buying pies and drinks and everything else that goes with a live sporting event.
But at least, I suppose, if we're all stuck at home, we can't go anywhere, we're not allowed to go out to restaurants, we can't go to gatherings, we can't go to the game, we can at least watch it on television, and I suppose it's great for programs like Fox Sports and others that get plenty of eyeballs then. The issue, though, we've seen this particularly in the NBA, we've seen it now too in football in the UK, once it starts to move into the coaches and the players and those on the ground, how long will it be before we're not even playing games to empty stadiums? We're not playing games at all. Well,
but that's the thing. That's the unanswerable question here, isn't it? Because there's a player over here, there's a coach there, there's a couple of NBA players that aren't playing. When does it? We just heard the news about Peter Dutton, Tom Hanks, the actor. So it's infiltrating all different levels and parts of society. What do they do when someone does become infected? I suppose, you know, there is a case that we may go 6 to 8 weeks with nothing. And wouldn't that be extraordinary? You've got to feel there's a real emotional side to all of this as well, isn't there? Because the Royal Easter Show in Sydney, the last time that didn't go ahead, and you've got all these, you know, people from the country coming in. That was the Spanish flu in the early part of the 20th century. So no show bags for kids. It's a difficult time. And look, I know that from the children's perspective, a lot of things are being cancelled, camps are being cancelled, some sporting events are being cancelled as well. You've got to take measures, but it's a bit like getting rid of the Easter Bunny or Santa, isn't it, in some ways?